Hi, my name is Gerhard Schwander and welcome to Selling Power TV. Today we have the great pleasure of meeting with Matthew Pollard. He is the author of a wonderful new book, The Introverts Guide to Networking. Hi, Matt.
Yeah, mate. Great to be on.
So what made you decide to write a book first on introversion?
I think a lot of people that don't know me well, I think they'll see the way I articulate myself, in interviews like this and on stage presentations, and they go, that guy's just naturally got that gift of gab. He can just sell to anyone. And I think the problem with that is people see me as I am today. They don't see me as I was when I first started. And because of that, I started sharing my personal story, and I put up this slide of me with horrible acne, and that was and braces at my sister's wedding. I talk about my reading speed issues and how introverted that left me and how I fell into sales. And then I would go into talking about selling, and how you can create a sales system. And what was interesting is how many people came afterwards and said, Matt, I had no idea that I could sell as an introvert. And it just got me to the point where I was telling everyone that I knew that somebody needed to write a book on introverted selling. And then what happened was I ended up working with a ghostwriter that was a client of mine, and I took him from making $27,000 in 2013. And by the end of the following year, he made just shy of $300,000. And it was all because of this system that I have created, specifically designed to help introverts without the bulldog techniques and the hard closing. And he just said, Matt, you've got to put this into words you've got to work with, put into a book. He was a ghostwriter. So we then decided to collaborate. And that's really how it happened. But, it was really because no one else thought that people would buy a book on introverted selling that I just got fed up of telling people to write it. And I decided that somebody needed to write it, and there needed to be a book written for us.
You were selling telecommunication services door to door?
Here I am, I've just applied for this job, and they give me 5 days product training and not a single second of sales training. And then they throw me out on this road called Sydney Road in Melbourne, Australia. So it's like 1,000 doors on each side, and they're all like little junk stores, and I get told to go sell, but I don't even know what to say. So I take this deep breath and I'm like, all right, just go in and say something. And luckily enough, I was politely told to leave. Then I was less politely told to leave. Then I was sworn at. But my favorite was always people looking at me going, why don't you just go get a real job? I mean, this was the only job I could get. And then, I kept going door to door, and that just kept happening until on my 93rd door, I made my first sale. And I remember I made about $70. And I was ecstatic for about 45 seconds until I had my second realization for the day. I got to do this again tomorrow and the next day and the next. Not for me. So I went, no, sales has got to be a system, because if not, my year's going to suck. So what I decided to do is I typed in sales system in YouTube, and all these videos came up. And then what I did is I would spend 8 hours in the field practicing what I'd learned, and then 8 hours, learning the new bits. But literally within a period of just 6 weeks, I mean, number of doors it would take me to make a sale would go down. It was like 72 doors, and then it was 31 doors, and then it was 12 doors, and then it was 9 doors, and then it was 3. I mean, this company employed thousands of staff. They called themselves the largest sales and marketing company in the Southern Hemisphere. And I was able to go from terrified to being in sales, really having no business being in sales, to really being the number one in the company within a space of just 6-week period. What I realized is the reason for why I was doing so well is because, firstly, as an introvert, it was an external process. So because of that, I mean, they teach people, when's the best time to make a sale? Well, right after your last one. Why? Because if you've just been rejected, you're feeling down. Well, if it's external, you're not feeling down, right? You're just going through the motions every time. The second thing is, for me, when I looked at it as a system, what I found is there were similarities between every person that I spoke to. And I noticed that certain greetings worked better than others with gatekeepers, and certain greetings worked really well with owners. And I created ways of, introducing myself that generated artificial rapport that led into conversations where I was comfortable. For me, everything is a decision tree. And then what I learned, which was the big discovery, is that if I could niche down the number of people that I sold to, where I would only sell to a specific type of industry or a certain group that wanted a specific outcome, it became even simpler, because instead of the decision tree being this big, generally people only had 1, 2, or 3 problems that they needed an outcome for, which meant I only really needed a series of questions to get to those problems. And usually I didn't need more than 2 to 5 questions.
So what is the introvert's edge?
To me, well, I think the biggest introvert's edge is preparation. 90% of all success in a networking room comes from preparation. You can go into networking events these days knowing exactly who you want to speak to, exactly what's going to stimulate interest, and you can even plan out what you're going to say. And again, if you know how to niche, you can actually make sure a lot of those conversations are going to be relatively the same every time. For me, if you're looking at what is the introvert's edge, the fact is they're amazing listeners. They have amazing levels of empathy. There are studies that show that introverts have a huge amount of deep relationships. So if you think about what I would consider the ultimate introvert's edge, it's the ability to plan and leverage the power of a system that then leverages all of their introverted strengths. Because as soon as they realize they can systemize networking, they can systemize selling, they can systemize speaking from stage, their ability to actively listen, their ability to empathize, and their ability to leverage those to create really deep relationships allows them to run circles around their extroverted counterparts. Because of how bad a salesperson I was and how horrible I was at creating rapport and how pathetic I was at continuing a dialogue that anyone else wasn't leading, I then gravitated to a system and I held on to it.
The bigger the why, the bigger the try, the easier the how.
Absolutely. And I think that's the most important thing. A lot of times, while I'd like to think I'm a great coach, in truth, just getting people laser focused on what they want and more importantly, why they want it allows them to see opportunities that were right there in front of them the whole time. I've worked with people that say, there's no way I can make money doing what I love. Then I say, okay, let's get you focused on it. Let's just remove all that rubbish out of your head. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, these phone calls just kept happening and I ran into all the right people. And I'm like, my bet is the people were there the whole time.
How do we wrap it up?
So for the people that are listening that are introverted, that really want to succeed in sales and networking, you can start by going to the introvertsedge.com, and there you'll be able to download the first chapter of the Introvert's Edge, which focuses on sales. It'll help you overcome your worries about whether or not you can sell and realize that you actually will be an amazing salesperson. And then if you go to the introvertsedge.com/networking, you'll be able to download the first chapter of my second book, which will then help you do the exact same thing in networking and then loop it in to what you're doing in the digital world through social engagement online through digital networking.
Thanks, mate.
Mate, this was a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on.